Sometimes a story comes along that just shifts your perspective. This is one of those stories. It's about a spirit named Aja and the secret of herbs. But it's really about a way of knowing our world that is both incredibly ancient and, as we're about to see, more relevant than ever.
So let's start right here with this idea. Think about it. Long before the first textbook, before the first scientific discovery, there was a wisdom that already existed. It wasn't invented. It was just there, waiting in the forest, embodied by a spirit named Aja.
All right, so our journey begins with this spirit in the forest, and I want you to pay close attention to those words on the screen, ungovernable and wild, because that's the key. This is about a kind of knowledge that just refuses to be pinned down, categorized, or tamed.
So who exactly is Aja? Well, in the Yoruba tradition, she's an Orisha, a spirit of the forest, the wind, the herbs. And here's what's so fascinating about her. She's not some distant deity ruling from a throne. Oh no, she runs. And her teaching style, let's just say it's unconventional. She finds healers and, well, she gently abducts them, pulling them deep into the woods. Not to sit them down for a lecture, but for total immersion. The forest itself becomes the classroom.
And this is where we get to the real heart of the matter. Aja represents a completely different way of knowing. It stands in such stark contrast to the kind of institutional, by-the-book knowledge that most of us are familiar with. Just look at this comparison. On one side, you've got the catalog. That's the knowledge we're all used to, right? It's written in books, approved by institutions, broken down into tiny, separate pieces. But on the other side, you have the living relationship. This is knowledge that's holistic, it's gained through direct experience, and it's deeply personal and relational. And that brings us to this really powerful concept, embodied knowing. So what is that? Well, it's not about memorizing facts for a test. It's the kind of knowledge a master carpenter has in their hands, or a chef has in their sense of smell. It's an intelligence that lives in your body, gained only through direct, hands-on, prolonged experience. It literally becomes a part of who you are. I just love this quote because it captures it perfectly. The wisdom of the forest is just too alive, too interconnected to be neatly filed away on a shelf or squeezed into a syllabus. It demands you show up with your whole self, all your senses firing to even begin to understand it.
So, you have this rich, living knowledge, but what happens when it's brutally whipped from its home? In this next section, we're going to look at how this incredible tradition was forced into exile and somehow managed to survive one of history's greatest horrors.
Let's just trace this incredible and, frankly, heartbreaking journey. The tradition is flourishing in West Africa. Then comes the unimaginable disruption of the Middle Passage, where enslaved people were systematically denied the right to read or write. So what was the only kind of knowledge that could survive that? The embodied kind. The knowledge carried in memory, in practice, in story. It went underground, hiding in plain sight in traditions like rootwork and conjure.
And think about that. What managed to survive wasn't just some watered-down remnant. No, it was the tradition's toughest, most resilient, most essential core. It was the knowledge that couldn't be burned or confiscated because it lived inside people, not on a piece of paper.
So how on earth did it survive? Through some truly brilliant strategies. First, this idea of the double voice. It meant communicating in code. A spiritual that sounded like a simple song of devotion to the slaveholder was, to the community, a map to freedom. Second, the community itself became the archive. People, relationships, practices, that's where the knowledge was kept safe. And finally, it adapted. It changed its outer appearance to fit in, all without ever giving up its core wisdom. And this is where the story pivots from history to right now. Because this isn't just about the past. This ancient way of knowing is bubbling back up to the surface, offering powerful answers to some of our most urgent modern problems.
So the big question is, why does this matter so much now? How is this ancient knowledge actually showing up in the 21st century and healing things?
This chart just lays it out so clearly. You take a modern crisis, like medical racism, and Aja's wisdom offers an answer. Healing sovereignty, the community's right to control its own health. For food deserts, it's food sovereignty. For polluted land, environmental justice. And for the devastating crisis of maternal mortality, the answer is the return of the doula and the midwife.
And let's just pause on that last point for a second because it is staggering. Black women in the United States are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. It's a devastating statistic that shows the deep failures of a purely institutional, depersonalized system. And the return of the doula, someone who provides continuous, relational, whole person support. That is the return of Ajanwa's wisdom, and it is literally saving lives.
So this all leads to us, to the now. Because this tradition isn't just some beautiful story to admire from a distance. It's a living inheritance that comes with a real responsibility. Let's be absolutely clear about this. This isn't a relic, it's not superstition, it is an active, living tradition, a sustainable way of knowing and being in the world. And for the communities that have carried it through so much, it is a profound act of self-determination. And the story doesn't end here. It's still being written. Just as this quote says, the next generation of healers and herbalists and keepers of this knowledge, they're already there, waiting at the edge of the forest, ready to begin. And that leaves all of us with a final, pretty urgent question. At its heart, Aja's wisdom is about relationship, about care, not about extraction and consumption. And that's a lesson for our entire modern world, not just one tradition. So the question is, for all of us, will we finally learn to listen to this deeper way of knowing before the silence becomes irreversible?